Welcome back, everyone, to our gameplay series of Satisfactory. So a lot has changed and looks very different from the last time we were together. I actually started a brand new save because I wanted to test some things out. I had some ideas and things turned out so well that that's where we are in today's video. We're at the same place, basically technology-wise, as where we were when we were last together, but the biggest change is in the layout of several things. So in today's video, we're actually going to just sort of take a moment to pause and take stock of where we are before we take that next big leap, which is to build the space elevator. Once we build the space elevator, we'll need to get into some more complexity with our machines, which means that logistics will be of vital importance. So before we got to that point, I wanted to do a video where we just take a look at where we are currently. We're currently on our lookout tower, which gives us a great vantage point to see what is, for right now, our entire factory. So we've got our portion up top, which is where we were used to building before, and that's where our primary production was. So we've got iron production up there, and a little bit later on, we'll head over there and see exactly what's going on. Then you see our copper production, which is no longer feeding into this flat area nearby, but actually I ran the conveyor belt down this little path that we've been using to get up and down off the different levels. And now our copper production is entirely based down in this area at the bottom. I've also left a little bit of area here. I'm hoping that's wide enough for the vehicles, particularly the bigger vehicles, as time goes on. But if it's not, then we'll have to make other arrangements, such as building ramps and going up and over that for transportation. So looking forward to seeing what's next. So copper production, we've got iron production up here, and then we've also got iron production down here on the bottom level, which is now the main level as well. We're only using 2 of the 3 iron nodes that are available down here. We're also not currently using the limestone that is available right over to the side, nor are we using the limestone that is actually right there. You can see I haven't even chipped away at any of the pure limestone that is on top of the ground. So we've got plenty of limestone left to really tap into. Right now we only have this one miner going on limestone, and it's making currently all of our concrete production. So then we need a lot of power to take care of that. Well, right over here in our hub, which I've moved down here on the bottom in this particular gameplay save, we've got, of course, our first couple of biomass burners. But then I've added additional burners over here in a dedicated area near our lookout tower. So all of those are currently burning biofuel, and as of a few minutes ago, we're completely full of biofuel, the maximum of 200. So right now we are in great shape with regards to fuel. So before we head down and actually get into the ground level view of our factory and how it's working, let's talk a little bit about, on our way down, let's talk a little bit about biomass and biofuel and how efficient or inefficient it has been this entire time. All right, so let's see if I can, there we go. Every once in a while, I have a tendency to fall off this thing because it's kind of hard to stay attached to the ladder for me at some points. So our gathering of biomass and turning that into biofuel has been a struggle because mainly we've been operating off of leaves, and then every once in a while we'll find some wood that will be lying along the ground that we can gather and use. So we would be running around chasing leaves just like this. However, it's a little bit different now because I made it to the tier of unlocking the chainsaw. Now the chainsaw is huge. Let's actually come over to our hub real quick and let's take a look at where that is. So we've got our biofuel under utility in tier 1. Then of course logistics, which was huge, gives us our splitter and our merger. Then we go to tier 2, obstacle clearing. This is where the chainsaw is located. It was very cheap as far as resources go based on the production we have going right now. But it was great because it gave us 5 inventory slots and the chainsaw. The chainsaw runs off of biofuel. Let's actually go ahead and equip it. The chainsaw is made right over here in the equipment workshop. And in order to make a chainsaw, you can see that you need some reinforced iron plates, as well as iron rods, screws, and cable. So not terribly expensive on any of those fronts to make, but once you have it, you notice in the bottom left-hand corner, it runs off of BioFuel, and we currently have 12 BioFuel. So let's see what we can gather. This thing is so much more efficient at gathering biomass because not only can it gather those leaves, but now we can cut down these pesky trees that have been in the way of our progress. Simply hold down the left mouse button for a couple of seconds and you gather that wood. Now visually nothing really changes while you're gathering the wood from the tree, but you just have to sort of stick with it. It's a very odd experience for me right now because every once in a while I will be in a position where I think I'm cutting the tree, but it doesn't actually cut. So it's something you have to keep an eye on. Make sure you're close enough. Basically, I try to just run up against the tree until it stops me with the collision detection, and that's how I know that I should be close enough to gather. All right, looks like we got another one up here. Let's go ahead and grab this one, and there you go. So it takes care of the tree, but it also takes care of any leaves that might be nearby. And you can also see that it has a very long reach as well. Let's actually go ahead and work on this tree and see what else we get along with it. There you go. Everything around it we gathered along with it. So it makes for a much more efficient way of gathering the biomass. The unfortunate part for me is I really wish that we would have had access to this much earlier in the game, as it would have really helped out with my stress levels early on in the game of having to run around and gather a lot of materials. Okay, we're now right over here next to our copper production, but there's one other thing I wanted to show you guys. This is a bit of a spoiler if you're not familiar with the game or if you haven't discovered this yet, but there is a cave right there. I'm not going to spoil what's down in there for you, anything like that, but there is a cave that you can explore right here near where all of our production is taking place. So let's now swap back over to our zapper, and we're going to take a quick look at our copper production. Now, I'm not going to pretend that this is maximum efficiency or anything like that, but it was so much fun for me to set this up. I love the idea of being able to extend the conveyor belts for extremely long distances. And of course, you can also, we could have come straight off of the cliff there if we wanted to. We could have raised this up if we wanted to. A whole lot of options that you have. But my main goal here was to try to keep the copper ore flowing into the smelters in such a way that we really didn't have any stoppage. Now you notice a little bit of stoppage over here of the copper ore as it is very close to the splitter, but basically it's only for a second, and over here in this particular smelter there's no stoppage at all. So once these copper ingots come out of the smelter, they are once again split so that we could send them to two separate constructors. On this side we have both of these constructors that are making the copper wire. Then we come over to our other split coming out of the back of this particular smelter. And again, you can see we've got a little bit of a backup here. Not quite going as efficiently as I would prefer, but we're still getting a lot of production. So now this constructor is also working on wire, but then we come over to the final one, and it is actually not working on wire at the very end of the line. It's working on cable, and you can see the cable coming out. And then of course for right now I have storage containers separate for each of these, but if you wanted to, you could combine the lines back in together if you wanted to. Just be aware that you might experience some slowdowns based on trying to combine those lines together. So right now everything is basically separated with regards to our production. I want everything to have its own dedicated storage for now. We'll see where things go in the future as we get the space elevator up and running, and once we go down that path of more complex products, that we're going to be in the future. But for right now, we're keeping everything separated. Then we come over to our concrete production. So we've got plenty of more production of concrete that we could have going other than what we do now, but it is certainly sufficient for our current needs. Now we move on to what has been our main iron production. Once again, you see the splitter. That is, just as with the copper, it is splitting off into a couple of different smelters, which are turning these into the iron ingots. And then we get into our constructors, which are then, in these first couple, are turning this into iron plates, which you can see going into their own dedicated storage. If we take a look in here, you can see we are ready for the next step in the game. But I've been having so much fun on this initial phase of the game before the space elevator that I almost hate to leave it at this point. I just want to travel around and set up more of our factory. So now once we get past these initial couple of iron plate production, then we get into our iron rod. So we do the same thing up in the front. The front area, we split off the ore into the two directions, into the smelters, and then we create those ingots, which then turn into the iron rods. So you can, again, it's not the maximum efficiency here, but it is certainly doing very well for our particular needs, and is giving me quite a bit of enjoyment. Thankfully, there's no collision right there, or we would have been beheaded. But everything is looking really good, and we are storing up quite a bit of material that should come in very handy as we get started in our next phase. So now that we've had a glimpse of the production, both of our concrete, copper, and then iron production down here, before we head up on top for our final phase of the iron production, or at least our final area of iron production, let's come in and take a look at our power generation. Of course, we know that we have a couple of biomass generators that are part of the hub, but then I decided to create a dedicated space nearby for power production right over here. So you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 biomass burners over there, plus the other 2. That will give us 8 biomass burners. And if we come over and click on our power pole, you can see we have a capacity of 160. We're using anywhere from 115 to about 130 or so. Sometimes it spikes up a little bit higher than that, but we have plenty of power production for our current needs. Thankfully, these power poles and power lines have unlimited ability to transport power. As best I can tell, there is no upper limit to their capacity other than, of course, the limit to only 4 of the connections. And of course, even that, I believe there's going to be a Mark II power pole, which will give us even more ability than that. So now that we've seen our production levels down here at the base, let's move up top and take a look at where things are there. Things are going to look pretty different once we get up here, simply because I have removed several of the trees and shrubs up in this area. You can see there's still plenty of biomass left to be created, but I have done quite a bit of clearing out, particularly down in this area. I'm leaving some of the plants for the berries because I'm not sure if they ever respawn. I haven't seen any respawn to this point, but hey, there's always hope for the future that they will respawn, even though they're not heavily needed by us at this time. All right, so now we come into, we've got our 2 miners. One that I had a little bit of fun with the conveyor belt and ran it a little bit higher around the corner to get to its destination. But here you see very much the same type of setup as what we were looking at for iron production down below. We've got the iron ore being split off and going into 2 separate smelters, which are turning these into, of course, ingots. And then here in the first couple of these, you see the iron plates. All right, I don't see any iron. Yeah, there we go. That's taking a little bit longer than I would have liked, but hey, that's the price we pay for having some fun. So again, iron ingots coming out here. But now, oh, look at there. We are missing some belts. So now we've got some ingots coming out of our splitter there going into this constructor, which is going to now turn this into iron rods. And that's what we're going to find as things move forward. Iron rod production, as well as iron plate production, is doing very well. Now, this is the newest of the areas. And the area that I just finished up, which would explain why I had forgotten to put our conveyor belt out there. All right, but now it looks like everything else is running along just fine. Let's take a moment, and looks like the constructor is, yes, there's some iron rods there. Let's take a look inside the constructor, and same thing here. Iron rods are coming out, and the efficiency has been really good. Now you can see it's not 100% all across the board, nor would I really expect it to be, given the age of the game and just how much time I've spent in it. I'm sure there are better configurations than what I have at this point, but it has been so much fun to get to this level, and quite frankly, I'm not terribly worried about reaching 100% efficiency on all of these machines. I know there's a lot of upgrades to go in the future. We're done with the hub upgrades, but now it's time to get into the space elevator, and that's what we're going to be doing as we move forward, particularly in our next video. So that's going to do it for now. Thank you very much for joining me, and stay tuned as we will continue our gameplay series of Satisfactory.